Okay. Great. So once we get our foot in the door with the Arizona clinic, we can move forward into the Texas clinics. So that's our big push. That's what we'd like to do. The other thing about these OBLs is all of them are looking to bring in more patients. COVID was hard on everybody, especially the private clinics. So the more patients that you can bring in, the better off you are. So from a business development perspective, what we've done in the past little while is establish distribution agreements in the Middle East, in Israel and in Turkey. And of late, we are now negotiating a letter of intent with the company that's interested in potentially acquiring technology and or company. Our exit strategy is basically sale of the company or technology. And we know that we can do that because the market is consolidating, and we'd be an attractive target once we demonstrate that we can actually penetrate it. So as an example of what it might look like, the latest consolidation was Varian Medical purchasing an embolic out of Boston Scientific. And that purchase was for $90 million US. So to summarize, we have a lead product that addresses large target markets. We have demonstrated traction in Canada and in the US. And we have a product that has marketing leverage that's desirable by these end users, by these private clinics that we're going to be targeting. And we're looking to raise $350,000 to support this marketing effort and manufacture a product secondary to the marketing. So thank you for your attention.
No time. Thank you. Any questions from advisors?
Yeah, I'm just curious, great presentation by the way. I'm just curious, like, does the product require cold chain logistics, or is it, can it be sustainable in regular logistics as well, because you're aiming to, send it to Middle East and other areas?
No, there's not based on our current shipping procedures. So no, not cold chain. The product is stable at room temperature for 4 years.
Okay.
So based on our current shipping methods, there are no issues with cold chain.
I think that's the question. Your raise of 350,000 is quite pretty small. Are you looking more for angel investors at this point, or?
Where our current shareholder base is angel investors. So yeah, more angel investors perhaps, but the idea then would be to grow the value of the company. If we aren't acquired right away, we have to continue to build the company. So we have to make sure that we're operational till we are acquired.
Yeah, so congratulations on getting FDA approval. That's great.
Thanks.
So what I understand, this product is an injectable product?
It's delivered by catheter into the bloodstream, but it's specifically in the blood vessels of the target tissue, and it's arterial.
Okay, and then so cost $500 file, and you're putting to the final Stewart. And how is your cash flow right now? Is it positive yet?
No, we're not positive cash flow. No. But we are bringing in revenue. It's just we need to continue to raise capital to grow the market for us.
So how big is the market for this? Because I know that
So we think it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars, but in North America, I think in North America, in the US alone, the market is about $300 million in embolization of fibroids, prostates, liver tumors, etc. So that's just the US alone. Outside the US, it's much, much larger than that. But if we conservatively penetrate the US, Canada, and Southeast Asia and Europe, we believe we're in the $250 million area.
So who would you think are your competitors?
Would you like to see them?
Yes, because they said they'd be more expensive. Which is about 500.
No, they're less expensive than us, actually. This is what our competitor, these are our competitors. So the green check marks are us across the top. And in comparison, our competitors are big. Boston Scientific has purchased another company to get the DCB Lumi product. Varian Medical purchased the product to have the Embazine particle out there. Merit Medical purchased a product from another company to market Embosphere. Cook Medical produces PDA foam particles. Teleflex produces the only other biodegradable, and I can't find this product on the market anymore.
So you do the best cloth formation instead of cats.
We do the best clot formation because we coat our microspheres with a special coating. Basically, it's collagen, binds platelets, triggers a reaction around the microspheres.
And it's biodegradable.
It's biodegradable, undetectable by ultrasound, so that's a safety thing. So ultrasound is non-invasive. The other products are detected by use of fluoroscopy. So the fluoroscopy detects a dye that's delivered with their agents. Well, if you use fluoroscopy, basically you're irradiating the patient and the staff that's administering the product.
It's not invasive, biodegradable. Just. Great
Question. Why it's important to be biodegradable and how it's not raise in the body, basically.
And why is
If
it?
it stays within the body, then I think it's not as much importance, okay, biodegradable.
So if it stays in the body, there's always a risk that it can travel elsewhere in the body. Like it's non-tissue, right? It's something that can move from one place to another. If it's biodegradable, it does its job and disappears. So the product degrades down to carbon dioxide and water. It's made of polylactide co-glycolide. So it's the same material that they make dissolvable sutures with. So it's well studied. The product is well studied.
So if it's not like disappearing in the body, because you want that to be delivered somewhere, but it will eventually vanish from that place.
That's correct. It's broken down metabolically. So over 4 to 6 months, the product completely disappears. You put it into the blood vessels that feed a target tissue, shuts off the blood supply, or if you shut it off properly, you'll either cause the tissue to shrink or you'll kill it. So some tissues like uterine fibroids, once you embolize the vasculature properly, you kill them. You may have other fibroids grow, but the one that you killed will never grow again.
Okay, so it's not necessary to stay till the end of life. Okay.
So as long as you embolize correctly, yes.
Hi, curious what the revenue was based on that variant acquisition. What were the sales of that product?
I think it was,
Emulsine?
yeah, I think it was 21 million,
So 21 acquired for 9.
correct. Yeah, so Varian also purchased another couple of companies to round out that portfolio. One was Endocare and the other one was Alicon. I think that was a $30 million annually. Endocare was ablative, and Alicon was a gel foam type particle. So basically, what they did was what they built is what we have, but it took them more bits and pieces to make what we've got. Our microspheres, we've also got a drug-eluting bead that's gone past proof of concept and is product line for us.
And so what are you gonna do with that? Is that being developed further?
Yeah, it's being developed further, but we're focusing on this product, the current product right now. So it's being developed in the background. If we find a partner that's interested in pushing that, like having it pushed forward quickly, we'll do that.
Sorry, could you share or elaborate on the library of in terms of what any treatment during the clinic, like if the product is involved in the library for your company as well, or
So in general, embolic agents, the big liability is non-target embolization. So that means if the physician doesn't do the procedure correctly, gets the product into the wrong blood vessels, then you embolize the wrong tissue. The physicians don't do that. It's well scripted, they're well trained. If the product is delivered, like as an example, once you get close to finishing off your embolization where you can see the blood flow starting to slow down, if you push too hard on the syringe when you put in the product, you can get backflow. It'll reflux and it can then go up the blood vessel and down to other blood vessels. Our product is denser than the other products. So we've shown in our preclinical testing that we have much, much less potential non-target embolization in animal study models.
Any other questions?
We've got a short break, so we do have time for a few more questions, or you can just take a break if you wish. We've got about 8 minutes left before our next session that Rhea is going to be chairing. So.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, well, it's.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to keep it straight, but
Yeah, like here.
You're done. You're done. We need your slide there.
I'll let him go first. He's at 2.
Yeah, but if you just load it, that would be great.
I'll load it here. No, I have his slide deck.
Oh, you have, okay.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Are you're ready to roll?
Yeah, pretty much. In terms of the next slide, is there a clicker or?
Yeah, there's a clicker. Might have to chase it down.
Does this look like?
Yeah, it's that one.
Perfect. Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah, maybe just try that on. We're
Yeah,
just gonna see.
I'll open your.
Just keep the next one up, that'd be fantastic. So, it was like so much fun. You're coming early and getting ready.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. It's a great slide deck.
Thank you so much.
So we are going to be taping here. I hope that's okay. There's a couple people watching online here. And so, just put it there. I'll just keep it rolling, if that's okay. I'm just taping the whole
Where would
thing.
you like me to stand? I'm guessing.
Yeah, you can see yourself there. That's
Okay.
perfect.
All right.
Like that?
It's basically, somehow I can see those CIO positions. I think we're good. Wait a minute. We're a long learning. Yeah, it's good to meet people. I'm so.
Thanks so much.
So essentially where we focus is social sector, social safety nets, so the home shelters, food banks, student accounts, and health services. About 280 billion spent on it a year, but there's no concerted data. So yeah, so that's where we're trying to play is how do we collect or then actually analyze.
Well, good. That sounds like.
I'm a bit lighter than last time, but
Yeah, well, I find transitions are always fun. Just sort of live out here. It's better. Keep it with it for a year. So it's getting a little bit easier.
yeah, no, it is like a great stride over, any startup scale up, make much mistakes.
Yeah, it's been around.
So, and I don't think I could go back to big business and just.
Yeah. I like a guy. It's a lot of like, so you know, it's
And if you ever need us, just let me know. Like I said, I've always loved this, so I just.
That's great. Just being here and giving a bit of advice to students.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. Yeah, just to make sure that, so I am trying to keep it up. There's some lunch now, just break, so if you ever want to do that.
Yeah. It's a game of repetition. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to get ready to. It's Saturday. There's something that's. Often this is a lot. Yeah. Take myself off this stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for finding your seats and getting ready for the next session. It's a busy day, so we've seen two great plans. We've got another pair of plans coming, and Ria's going to be introducing them. So I'll hand over to her, and maybe she'll say a couple words about the university as well.
Hi, it's nice to see everybody. I think I know most of you, but if you don't know me, my name is Ria and I'm the Associate Vice President of Enterprise with the University of Alberta. Our office was recently put together with the intent of being open for business. The idea is how do we build and bridge connection with our business community and the university. As you know, we're a very large institution with 42,000 students. 80% of those are undergraduate students, 20% are graduate students. And the most exciting part of my job actually is getting to work with people like Michael and other innovators across campus, learning about the great things that are happening and thinking about how we pair that with the external audience. So today is always inspiring. I really appreciate the invitation today. I appreciate the opportunity to connect. If we haven't connected, happy to chat at any time. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nikhil and Clinic Trial Hero. Here you go. Where's yours?
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Dr. Nikhil Joshi, and I'm the founder of Clinical Trial Hero. Clinical Trial Hero is all about accelerating clinical trial recruitment and helping pharma and other innovative companies build clinical trials faster. So I'm a clinical immunologist and internal medicine physician. While I was going through my residency, I was diagnosed with cancer. I went from being a doctor to being a patient. Becoming a patient taught me so much. It taught me what we do great in healthcare and where we fall short. My life was significantly impacted by a clinical trial, but interestingly, everybody here, all of your lives have been impacted by clinical trials. Whether that means you have a spouse who may have had cancer, a loved one who has Alzheimer's, or a child who has eczema, you've all benefited from clinical trials. You just didn't know it. There is a huge problem with clinical trials. That problem is that 80% of trials are significantly delayed. That means delayed over a month. That is billions of dollars lost in delayed revenue and lost market share. Market share and first movers advantage is significantly important to pharma and big tech. Patients also suffer as they wait for new therapies to become available. Now we're going to go through a quick video of our solution, and I'll discuss how our app and our solution helps the most important people, the most important shareholders in clinical trials.
Clinical Trial Hero is the next generation advancement for clinical trial recruitment. It's a multi-platform app you can download directly to your phone, tablet, or computer. Share info about a clinical trial to friends, colleagues, and loved ones, privately or publicly. Apply to join a clinical trial in just a few clicks. Access a library of mindfulness meditations for people with chronic illnesses. And watch videos to learn more about clinical trials. And get rewarded with micropayments for being a hero by simply sharing the app and info, our way of rewarding those who care for others. Advance your recruitment today with Clinical Trial Hero.
So what Clinical Trial Hero does is look at patients and realize that the best people to get them into a trial is another patient. For pharma, what we offer is pre-qualified patients who are ready before the trial starts. And what we want to bestow upon them is $1 billion first movers advantage. For clinical research organizations, they can make money from higher revenue, from higher numbers enrolled. And for health tech funds, we can help bring their portfolio companies' products to market faster. Our business model is that pharma pays per trial, around $1 million, and our target ROI to pharma is greater than 100x. We have spoken to insiders at Novartis Canada, and we have confirmed that a month of delay for a drug is worth greater than $200 million. So therefore, our ROI is even higher. If we save them half a day, if I save them 12 hours, they have more than made their share up. When we look at the huge market, there's a $47 billion global market, a $2.1 billion Canadian market, and a $100 million market here in Alberta, and we feel that we have a good shot. Our go-to-market strategy involves, first is that I'm a clinical trialist, and we received our first clinical trial. So we have to become the world's best. I have to blow the numbers out of the water, and that's what I intend to do. And as a result of that, we get access to global clinical trials operations, and we can show them that we have a tool that can help their entire trial move faster. In terms of pharma, how business gets done, it gets done with people who know people. And so we have to hire former executives and have them reach out to their old companies. And we believe this is another viable go-to-market strategy. In terms of the competitive analysis, competition is interesting. I used to think my competition were people like Clara Health, who raised $21 million and then were acquired by an African-American clinical research organization, or Antidote that raised $36 million and worked with AI. Interestingly, I don't dislike or fear any of my competition because they're doing valuable work. And that work is letting pharma know that clinical trial enablement is an important subsector to invest in. Furthermore, when we really look at it, the thing that keeps me up at night is not these other companies. What keeps me up at night is how do I pierce the layers of bureaucracy at pharma to show them a different way of doing things than they've done for the last 60 years. In terms of traction, we've had 2 successful pilots with a 52% increase in recruitment. We have our own clinical trial site. We received our first clinical trial. That means we will be revenue positive. We've filed our patents, and everything we do is by patients and for patients. And that authenticity is very important and central to what we do. Our team is wonderful, and the most important person to me is Rod Butt, who brings 30 years of biotech experience, former VP of Boehringer Ingelheim, and worked with as a director of Leo Pharma. For myself, what I think I bring to the table is that I'm, unlike many other physicians, I'm coachable. You can talk to me, you can tell me what a great strategy is, and I'm open to that. And I hope that that's something that I continue to have and grow as time goes on. Our financial ask is $3 million. Where with that money, we would finish our legal work as well as create our incentivized sharing platform. We'd get our first 5 customers or 5 trials for $5 million in revenue. But I want to be much broader. Today, for example, I met people who were potential customers. I've met potential advisors. And overall, we have a broad view of who can help us. And however you can help us is welcome. In terms of milestones, we're looking for partnership and investment, but we believe that within a couple of years, we'll be very, very revenue positive, and finally, hopefully go on to acquisition or IPO. In concluding, I want to tell you something nobody's ever told you, and that is in 10 years, we will cure cancer. In 20 years, we will cure neurodegenerative diseases, and in 30 years, we will cure heart disease. Simply and beautifully. And as a result of that, I would like everyone to think about it is to our personal and financial motivation to make these things happen quicker. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd like to open the floor for questions.
My greatest fear is that I'm going to outlive my money and my joints. So if you'd be curing all those diseases, great. I don't have a question. You had $1 million for legal. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the legal situations, we need to get SOC 2, HIPAA, high trust, GDPR, and then we are interested in seeing what we're going to have to do internationally. So we have allocated a large amount to it, as well as the micropayments bit. We have to understand what countries we can offer payments in. So for example, in the United States, they love the idea of offering payments to patients. In the EU, they hate it. So we'd have to create a platform that could do it for half the trial and not the other half.
I guess on your presentation, there was $5 million for executive. So is there a recent growth being impacted by the individuals you can bring in, or do they just sit down?
So we're saying that if anybody we bring in, that for them to get their equity share, they have to bring in revenue. And we believe that with their old contacts, they would be able to bring in around $5 million a year. Yep. So you said you think you can get about $1 million per trial, correct? Correct. So I used to work with a number of CROs and some companies you had out there, and I'd like to challenge that model. Because patient recruitment, the whole model now for a funder trial, like a pharma company, is off low risk. So if I'm trying to recruit per trial, I don't pay if the patients are recruited. So all I have to do is cast a wide net. And so, for example, one trial I was on in Toronto, a total of 3 patients were recruited, payable about $25,000 per treatment naive patient, which is super rare to find. So 1 million seems quite conservative when you compare with the payouts for finding a patient even on complex trials as if tens of thousands of dollars. And if you're looking at phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, your total catchment of patients, the numbers don't kind of add up. Sure. So to address that, I want to say we're talking about global multi-center trials. So if we're talking about small phase 1 trials, small phase 2, the numbers absolutely change. But our goal is, for Merck, they're going to cure cancer in 10 years. We should be their recruitment platform. We will only get faster, we'll only get better. And if Merck spends $1 million for us on, for example, the Keytruda trial with the Moderna vaccine, if they made that go faster, the fact is they'll make 100 times, 200 times that money. So you're absolutely right. The numbers have to change, but who we're really looking at helping are billion-dollar biotech companies for whom one extra day of getting a drug on the market is worth 8 times what I charge them. But that math breaks down because that $1 million day also comes with whether they were compliant to the trial. Issues drop out, basically wrong in the trial. And they right now can pay out per patient. So you're asking pharma to change the whole business model for you versus saying, let me show you, pay out your current rate of finding these patients, and I'll eventually become your partner. There's just kind of a disconnect between how they operate and the commercialization model you're suggesting. I agree that there is a bridge between the CRO model and where pharma is, but I do think that in terms of their innovation, their hope to have more diverse participants, as well as their openness to innovation, I think there is a role for us to be part of a significantly large biotech company like a Sanofi, like a Novartis, and be the recruitment arm. So recruitment as a service. We know that we've been offloading things on the CROs for a long time, and it doesn't make anything faster. It just makes things more expensive and drawn out. You know, with risk though, that's
Last question. So we have one more question, but time for one more.
Are you able to speak to what the patent applications are presenting, what specific novel pieces you're working around?
Sure. So right now, what we're building around is the code for the patent for the micropayments.
Any additional questions?
How do you get patients addicted to becoming part of the trial that they get every time town hall has that happen?
You're absolutely right. So that's why we that's why gamification is a part of it. Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering again, I guess your key customer is the pharma executive who has to make that decision, right? And so they've got a large budget, they've got an existing model. How are you finding that person? Are you finding that person because you're paying them to become part of your network, or your referral network, on top of their existing job?
So I'm getting them in 2 ways. The first way is, as a clinical trialist, I have to be the best. So if I'm the top recruiting site for a clinical trial, now I have access to them. The second way I get it is by getting people who have left that job. So former pharma executives who still have warm contacts back at their old home.
Very good.
So patient-wise, this is a play on numbers, right? Because say you need 10 times the people that sign on to this app, then will get recruited, right? So for every 10 people that sign on, one will get recruited to trial. So how are you getting these patients to come and sign on to your app? Because I've looked at the app, it's nice, it exists. So
Thank you. Okay, so we use a couple of ways. So the traditional way is a social media ad, but we do a little bit more than that. We get patients who have the disease to do interviews, to write blogs, and we have them activate their network before the trial even starts. And so that way we have a bunch of people already ready, then the trial hits, and now we can push out a notification to 20 people for a 2-spot trial and fill it very quickly.
so how many people do you have signed up now?
We had over 4,000 downloaded, and for our latest trial, from my first trial, we have already had 2 highly qualified patients who have already been through the screening process, the pre-screening process. So we had 30 downloaded and 2 who will most likely fill that trial.
We're at time. Sorry. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I now introduce Shairaz, who will be presenting on behalf of BioImmuno Design.
Thank you. Thanks to Michael and the organizers for selecting me today. It's been a few years since I presented to this group. Over the next 15 minutes or so, I just wanted to introduce you to my company, BioImmuno Designs, and to kind of describe what we've done so far, where we'd like to be, and then finish with who we are. So my name is Shairaz Baksh. I'm the president and CEO for the company. So the company is really interested in diagnostics and therapeutics of inflammatory diseases. My background training is in immunology and cancer, and understanding inflammatory pathways and how they might drive disease. So we several years ago was quite interested in this, and we came up with some interesting tests and diagnostics that could help individuals that have inflammatory problems. And there's a lot of unmet need in inflammatory diseases, and shown here are some of these unmet needs. Directed therapies needed for the resolution of inflammation in several settings, in asthmatic settings, osteoarthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, pancreatitis, and quite recently the SARS-CoV-2 and dealing with long COVID disease. These are all areas that have unmet need. Low-grade inflammation and diabetes and obesity and neuroinflammation is something that's emerging as an interesting driver of not the primary disease, but progression of several of these diseases, such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, stroke, neuropathic pain. These are all neuroinflammation has a strong driver of disease and progression of some of these diseases. And efficacy and safety, tolerization, toxicity are issues that exist for most of the treatments that exist for some of these diseases. And so I think there's a very clear need for new directed therapies to better understand the pathways that are driving these diseases and come up with more directed therapy. So we embarked on identifying novel therapeutics for inflammatory conditions. And this was during the time when I was an academic at the University of Alberta. Novel therapeutics were identified by computational analysis, just basically looking at some inflammatory diseases and to see what the commonalities were. And we identified 3 such elements. We pursued one of them, and I'm trying to understand the molecular pathways that element was involved with, using cell-based and animal models. And then once that became interesting, we then pursued diagnostic tools and detection methods for that one molecule. And that molecule turned out to be part of a pathogen receptor pathway activating NF-kappa B, which is a main driver of inflammation. And so we thought targeting this kinase would inhibit inflammation, and both systemically and in the brain, slowing down the progression of neurological disorders and inhibit inflammation in many settings, including inflammation-driven cancers. Our first focus was on the anti-inflammatory properties of this identified kinase. And so the company there evolved into multiple directions. One is the small molecule therapeutic, which is the main focus for the company. We are currently in 3rd generation modifications. We're also developing a diagnostic, companion diagnostic for it. A collaborator of mine was quite interested in the small molecule that I identified because he thought that would be a really good surrogate for inflammation, and therefore the design of a PET probe to look for whole body inflammation was something that he was quite interested in, and that's something that we might pursue later on. So these are all items in development. I have a proprietary antibody to the active kinase and the 1st generation inhibitors that's being sold by QED Biosciences, and that's a small amount of revenue coming to the company that way. And so we're quite investing need. There's 3 programs that we're trying to focus on. One is the main program, which is therapeutics development of the small molecule to better understand it and better get it ready for clinic. And again, we're in 3rd generation development of this therapeutic. The 2 other programs are diagnostics, which is the companion diagnostic, and also program to use whole body inflammation. These are minor programs, but the main program is a therapeutic against the anti-inflammatory therapeutic. So proof of concept, we've had several animal models to show proof of concept, and illustrated here are some of those results where we can alleviate inflammation in an IBD model, which is DSS-induced inflammation. In a lung model for asthma, we can alleviate lung inflammation. In a cystic fibrosis model, the same thing, we can alleviate lung inflammation with our inhibitor added to these animals. And quite recently in stroke, animals that have mice that have stroke, post-stroke, if they're given the inhibitor, these mice regain their cognitive abilities, indicating that the inhibitor can alleviate neuronal inflammation and allow these animals to recover. So we're quite excited about that finding. And we can also inhibit colonic tumors following an inflammation-induced malignancy model. We also have recent evidence in a SARS-CoV-2 infection model that the inhibitor can also inhibit lung inflammation in that model. And shown here are just some of the data. This is the only data slide that we're going to have, where we, in all these different diseases shown here on the x-axis are all different diseases, and the full chain in our inhibitor, we can see a large increase in the active form of the kinase, which is the target of the therapeutic. And in several of these settings, in a CRC colon model, breast cancer model, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and stroke, we can see alleviation using the inhibitor and inhibition of the inflammation, and to reverse some of the clinical symptoms that these animal models have. And quite recently in Parkinson's, in an encephalitis model in Parkinson's, we see activation of the kinase in a knock-in model, and we suspect that the anti-inflammatory properties of the drug can help reduce inflammation in a Parkinson's model. So that's something that could be interesting to explore later on. So our potential, competition in this space, it's growing. There's definitely some importance of this kinase in the literature. Oncodesign is a company that's identified their own inhibitor. Weihai Institute, Novartis. GSK had an inhibitor to RIPK2, but it had a phase 1 trial. The phase 1 trial was terminated in December last year, not because of the target was not the one that's causing the toxicity, but the drug was. And I knew that because we had evidence in my group that that drug was also toxic to the cells. So it failed during the phase 1 trial. Quite recently, a company called Boehringer Ingelheim, they also came out with a RIPK2 inhibitor in 2021, and their kinase inhibitor was quite interesting. They had this published in a manuscript. The title is that's as a selective RIPK2 kinase inhibitor, but you can see that if you look at inhibition of all these different kinases, it does have other effects. So it's not very specific. Let's sit back first. So we now know quite a bit about the kinase right now, and I think these are some of the properties of the kinase that make it, I think, unique, and that we can compete with companies like GSK. We have greater stability of the target in our inhibitor, and we know that from computational modeling. Specific inhibition of the active versus non-active form, which is quite an interesting property of BioImmuno designs for K2 inhibitor. We can see potent in vivo inhibition at 1 to 5 micrograms per gram body weight, which is quite interesting. So far, we have not seen any toxicity. Bioavailability is to 75%. And we know the clearance in the blood, it can stay in the blood up to 6 hours. So we know a lot of pharmacokinetics about blood inhibitor. And again, so far, we see no toxicity. Even in cell-based assays, it's still not toxic to cells. So we think that there might be two interesting addressable populations if we can get to clinical trials, when we get to clinical trials. Pancreatitis and inflammatory bowel disease are the first two I think we could initialize, and that's relying on the anti-inflammatory properties of the drug. But I think it goes beyond that, and the drug also has anti-cancer properties. So pancreatic cancer could be an interesting future. And for stroke, we're getting really interesting data from stroke models that the alleviation of neuroinflammation can benefit animals that have stroke. So that's an interesting future addressable population. And therapeutic development, where are we at now in our development? As I mentioned earlier, we are in generation 3 development, and a lot of the money that was secured during Alberta Innovates help. Merck also gave some money to us and friends and family. We were able to raise about $200,000, so we did a lot of this work with. And we're in generation 3 of development. We have a lot of animal studies to show efficacy in animals and proof of concept in animals. We also have we have an interesting team to look at medicinal chemistry optimization. And again, I think we're about 2 rounds or so away from what we think is our lead target, our lead drug. And the hope is that by 2024, which is where you see the X's, by 2023, 2024, early 2024, we'll be there to start some investigation in drug studies to be able to take it to a phase 1 trial. And so just the last slide, proposed partnerships that we want to and the ask that we're asking is to advance our lead optimization to another round or 2 to better understand the drug, better understand how it behaves in vivo, and to understand pharmacokinetics better, because we understand quite a bit so far, but there's still more that we need to know. And I think we might be a round or so away from that target. So with ask is about 150,000 for that. We would like to continue to develop our companion diagnostics to RIPK2, and this will be done in collaboration with this BioImmuno Diagnostics, which to have an interesting platform for that. And the last thing, we can get grants to allow the development of the PET probe, because my collaborator at UVA is quite interested in that. So a minor amount of the money will be used for that. But this is sort of the ask that we're asking for, really mainly to better understand the drug, better understand its anti-inflammatory properties, and then we can come up with our lead model for them to take to the clinic. So who are we? I'm Shairaz, Baksh, the president and founder. We have a team of medicinal chemists that have been helped us over the years for drug design and synthesis. Dr. Frederick West for medicinal chemistry consultant, and we have 2 GI physicians that are helping us with our clinical plan and a better understanding of animal models for inflammation. And thank you to many people. Alberta Innovates, University of Ottawa collaborators. Marc sponsored us in the beginning for some of these studies, and our collaborators, international collaborators in Sao Paulo and Germany and in Florida. So this is my information. So if you do want to contact me, and I'll entertain any questions that you may have. Yes.
Last question. I guess my biggest one, talking about full body tech marker with everything's happening with COVID, long COVID, and chronic fatigue recently. Has there been any discussion about looking into chronic fatigue, long COVID, and maybe private health, seeing massive patient populations?
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned that, because the molecular pathway I'm studying that's a target for the kinase has been shown very, I think, convincingly to be part of the inflammatory pathway that activates chronic pain in the brain, so activation of the pain receptor. So a collaborator of mine is just starting to do that work to see how the use of my inhibitor can alleviate chronic pain by inhibiting that inflammation pathway that activates the pain receptor. So yes.
I think if you find a way to share that, you're going to eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I know neuroinflammation is such an important thing, activator of many things. I know it's secondary to the primary disease, but it's part of the progression of that disease. And I think to really allow patients to go back into remission, you need to fix that problem.
If you treat the symptoms, patients are happy.
Yeah, it's true. Yes.
I'm just surprised in comparison to all app people who ask a lot, you are actually doing stuff where the money which you are requesting would be not enough to actually explore.
Yeah. I know I need more to get to the next slide, but I think this will get us to a point that we can, get a bigger.
Right, I don't want to downgrade the work of people who are dealing with apps, but to my personal thinking, I feel that this type of work definitely do require more funding than what we are talking about. While in the app situation, you kind of can squeeze a little bit, work a little bit, and without funding. Maybe I'm wrong.
Question?
Yes.
So you're going to continue to work on some further iterations of this inhibitor. But have you got a feeling yet as to what indication you might be seeking first?
What complication?
What indication?
Oh, indication.
I think you had a slide with the indication.
For target addressable population, initially.
Well, what are you going to use it in first? Where are you going to go? Because you can use it, obviously, you're saying it's, it could be used in a lot of different indications.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking first?
So we know a lot about the anti-inflammatory properties of the drug, and I do have evidence in some inflammatory cancers it can be beneficial. I think our first 2 addressable population will be inflammatory conditions. So inflammatory bowel disease, but most likely pancreatitis. Inflammatory bowel disease is, the space is very competitive.
Yeah.
But populations such as pancreatitis or even long COVID, if I continue to see success with reduction of lung inflammation in the COVID infection model, which a collaborator of mine is currently working on, trying to get more information from me for that model, I think those 2 could be interesting to address once we're ready to go to clinic. But I think the focus should be on inflammatory diseases first, because that's a primary function for the drug. And I think that could be an addressable. If we see success in pancreatitis, pancreatic cancer could be a follow-up population. I think stroke is very interesting, especially if it translates into inhibition of inflammation, allows individuals to regain some of their cognitive abilities, that's a very important finding. But it's a more long-term study than initial studies in pancreatitis or inflammatory bowel disease. And I wanted to say also, all the IP and patent is now owned by myself and the company. It's no longer with the University of Alberta, so I didn't quite make that clear. But and the proprietary antibody now is with the company. Two questions.
Thank you for the presentation, really impressive stuff. I was reading through the business summary. It said that you expect to file additional patents in your future for the generation of companies.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of the story.
Says that you expect to file additional patents in your future for third generation compounds for you, Gracer. Yeah. Or how years.
Yeah, so we have the lead on the third generation compound, and the person who filed the first one is right here. Ted helped me a lot with the filing and the PCT. Yeah, I do have that. It went for national review, and a lot of the compounds were thought to be unique. So I have to reinitiate that again. But we do have generation 3 that's that's only been seen by my eyes, and I think and I've had some preliminary test indications to show that I have improved it. Like generation 1 had 50% bioavailability. Generation 2 and 3 are now 75%. So we've improved. I think we've improved the drug and some of the properties it can do. But a lot of the money that I'm asking for it will be needed to really understand generation 3 and decide, do we really need to go to another generation? And so there's a lot more pharmacokinetics that I haven't done yet that I need to work on. But I think I will start the next patent continue the patent on generation 3 inhibitors.
Just wondering, how do you avoid the off-target, like RIPK kinase, RIPK in a tissue that you don't want to hit and just get it in your target tissue? Maybe you can't go into the details, but I think you have some magic that you haven't gone through there.
I do. I've been doing an analysis of how the drug can fit into the target. And using molecular modeling or empirical determination of IC50s. So the one thing that I've seen is that the drug does not inhibit the full length protein at the concentrations we're using. It only inhibits the active form of the protein, and that's an interesting feature. And I've done the same thing with the GSK drug that was in clinical trials, and GSK drug inhibits both equally, the full length, which is the non-active form, and the active form. It appears that my drug only inhibits the active form, which will avoid those kinds of toxicities against a target that's not active or in a different tissue. So my feeling is that it will only see the active form in a disease setting, or if it's active, it will inhibit it, which will most likely be in a disease setting.
You could have less toxicity, but you probably wouldn't be inhibiting an inactive form with much effect in any case. But I guess it's partially active. Is it autophosphorylating, or is there?
It is autophosphorylation, and that opens it up in order to see its substrate. So that opened up truncated form is what I've done some bioassays with, and I can see very robust inhibition of that form against the form that's not active. It's greater than 500 micromolar. So it's a very different spectrum of inhibition. And my prediction is the concentrations we're using, which is 1 to 5 micrograms per gram body weight, you're not going to get inhibition of the full length protein. So I think that's where my drug differs from GSK and a few other drugs that I've compared it to, and it could be an advantage. You never know what when you go to clinic happens, but it could be an advantage based on our initial studies.
Oh, sorry, I think we have one.
So you mentioned that this is your third iterations and you have about 3 compounds that you're using different concentrations of. But it mentions that you want to target cancer and asthma. What are you targeting?
The population, we would like to target the use the anti-inflammatory properties of the drug first. And so because of that, we'll probably target patients who have inflammatory conditions such as pancreatitis and inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammatory bowel disease space is very competitive, so I think pancreatitis will be a really interesting first population to address.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to call Marc.
Gonna hit a timer here.
Okay, also just remember to fill out your forms. That feedback is really, really useful. So either online or on paper, and I'll get that feedback to the presenters, including Mark.
Fantastic. I couldn't agree more. Feedback is really, really useful. So starting off, look at this room. This is a fantastic looking room, and everyone's gaming it out here late. I got here late, so I apologize for walking in partway through, but I had to leave the hospital to get here. So appreciate everybody spending their valuable time here to give us feedback. My name is Marc Curial. I'm an emergency physician, full-time practicing emergency physician. I say I'm an accidental entrepreneur because I never planned on starting a company. Acoustics in the back, okay? Yeah, fantastic. So Mach 32, my company. We are revolutionizing pre-hospital hemorrhage management. And that sounds fancy, but realistically, I'm just trying to stop people from bleeding to death before they get to the hospital. Once they get to the hospital, there's other things we can do. And the whole idea for our company came from a patient I had during residency. I had a young guy, he was up north, he was driving his ATV after a couple of pops. And you know, just like young guys do, we like speed, we are stupid, we hurt ourselves. He crashed into a tree. He laid in the bush for about 3.5, 4 hours. He was getting treatment from a BLS, a basic life support medical crew. What can BLS medics do? They can give aspirin, they can give an EpiPen, they can give an IV with fluids. That's it. That's all that these paramedics are allowed to do. And about 1/3 of North American paramedics are BLS trained or lower. So this guy sat in the bush for hours. When he got to the emerge, he was critically sick. He was not dead yet, but he was almost dead. And basically everything I did almost killed him. I sent him to the operating room, and then he did get very sick. He survived, but he had horrible brain damage from his massive blood loss. And I didn't want that to happen to patients ever again. That's why we came up with IMSafe. And IMSafe is an EpiPen for trauma. That's the easiest way to think about it. It's letting first responders deliver a blood clotting drug at the scene of injury. Now, simply put, massive hemorrhage is a massive problem. And this is something a lot of people don't realize, but trauma and hemorrhages is actually responsible for almost 10% of all worldwide deaths. We're going to cure cancer in 10 years. We're going to cure heart disease in 20 years. That sounds fantastic. Why are women still bleeding to death after childbirth, though? That's a question that I have. This is a pretty simple problem, but there's a lot of solutions that we can still implement. And you know, you look at some of these demographics, they're really important demographics. Soldiers, #1 cause of preventable battlefield death is hemorrhage and trauma. Accident victims, #1 cause of death in developed nations for men under the age of 45, because as I mentioned, we're stupid. And mothers, over 200 women bleed to death every year after childbirth, and that's unacceptable to me. So the solution is IMSafe, which is an EpiPen for trauma. This is a novel high volume auto injector. When I say high volume, what does that mean? About 16 times bigger than an EpiPen. Right? The EpiPen delivers 0.3 mils of drugs. Our device delivers 5 mils of drugs. And we have to do that because of the drug. The volume of drug that you administer is 10 to 20 mils, depending on which protocol you look at. So that's a very large volume to deliver in an intramuscular injection. We are using a safe, standard of care, proven medication that's been around since the 70s called TXA or tranexamic acid. This is a generic medication that is part of all of the trauma protocols, military, civilian, EMS, hospital. It's just generally not given early enough to make a difference. Okay, so we're going to deliver the drug faster and easier. Why does faster matter? Well, looking back at a meta-analysis of over 40,000 bleeding patients, it's estimated that 70% of those deaths could have been prevented if this drug was delivered earlier. That's massive for a $5 drug, 70% of 10% of worldwide deaths. It's huge. So the longer we wait, the less it works. And if we're after 3 hours, it actually causes harm. By the time patients get to the emergency room, it's pretty hard to start that IV and get the drug in time. So what other benefits can we see other than people dying less often? Well, studies of this drug given earlier pre-hospital show fewer blood transfusions significantly. Reduction in 28-day mortality, not just immediate, as well as shorter hospital stays. This is a very cost-effective medication in all economic considerations, high and low income countries. So this drug saves money, this drug saves lives. What is our technology? IMSafe, as I mentioned, is a high volume intramuscular auto injector. It's been tested hands-on by EMS, tactical police, military medics, firefighters, special forces to help us get to our beta prototype, which is still in-house 3D printed additive manufacturing. We've taken that prototype through 2 rounds of live tissue testing, validating we can deliver 5 mils of drug in under 2 seconds, deep intramuscular. And then the Canadian Armed Forces has actually just taken this tool from us and conducted a large animal trial looking at multiple different pig models for pharmacokinetics. We're hoping to get our data back on that in the next week or so here. So there's a very large trial that was run by the Canadian Armed Forces for us because they're so interested in this possibility. Now, I mentioned this is an old drug. This is a new route of administration. That's important. We're not just building a device. This is a drug delivery system. This is a drug device combination. Okay, so we're going to get to why that matters, but looking at the target market, being very cautious, looking at trained medical responders only, midwives, EMS, police, looking at firefighters and looking at military. In the United States alone, it's almost a $4 billion total addressable market for trauma. The SOM is about 10% of that. That's USA alone, not looking at civilians. But the most important part we can talk about here is auto injectors are not designed for medically trained professionals. They're designed for civilians. And the civilian market is orders of magnitude larger than this. That's been proven by multiple other auto injectors. Our go-to-market strategy is a proven phased approach, starting with the people who want it, which is the military, and working our way into civilian EMS. This has been shown with multiple other devices like the CAT tourniquet, the IT clamp, and the EpiPen itself, starting in North America, working through UK and then worldwide. So we're not trying to conquer the world in one day. We're getting really strong pull from the UK Armed Forces, Canadian Armed Forces, and US DoD. We're going to let them pull us into the markets. Don't take my word for it. Senior UK Ministry of Defense leader. He wants every deployed soldier, sailor, and airman to be equipped with a tranexamic acid auto-injector, and then for them to be phased into the ambulance service too. So much so that he actually put us in contact with the lead of the largest geographic ambulance service in the UK, who's interested in doing human factors trials with his medics on our device. Regulatory, this is where it gets really interesting. As I mentioned, we're not just a device, we're a drug-device combination. We're actually going to be regulated through the FDA as a drug because the drug is the mechanism of action. No, that's actually, it sounds scary, but it's good. It's going to require a new drug application. But there is a wealth of safety and efficacy data. It's been around for over 3 decades. The largest double-blind placebo-controlled trial in trauma ever was done on this medication. It's going to be a 505(b)(2) pathway, according to 2 regulatory experts, which is analogous to a 510(k) pathway if you know devices. And there's a huge amount of data that we can leverage. Apparently, when we talk to the FDA, we can't say the word leverage, though. We're already in discussions with several military partners on support for a phase 1 trial, right? They are interested in this device. We're trying to get it to markets. Now, what is the opportunity? Well, with the new drug application, you actually have an exclusivity period in the United States that no one else can market the same device or medication for the same indication, which would give us just another level of protection to our moats. Intellectual property, we have 2 PCTs filed on the drug delivery system itself and the mechanism of action. Several people have tried to do a 5 mil injector. No one's been able to get it right in live tissue in under 2 seconds. So that's where our IP is around. We're also doing a lot of work on formulation of the medication to concentrate it so we can get more drug in smaller volume. That's not ready for the patent application yet, but hopefully in the next several months, we'll have some IP around that as well. We're working on some track 1 expedited applications that as soon as we get our PK data back, we're going to launch into the FDA as well. But that is still pending the pharmacokinetic data from the Armed Forces trial. Competition right now is standard of care, which is an intravenous, which is hard. You need special training. It takes 10, 15, 20 minutes to get an intravenous in good conditions. So imagine if you're under enemy fire and you're trying to start an intravenous, this fine motor skill where you're sitting and shaking. We can deliver the medication in less than 2 seconds, as I mentioned. The current protocol, intravenous, you need to deliver it in a 10-minute drip because the potential for dropping patients' blood pressure if you deliver it too quickly. You bypass that intramuscular, but you hit therapeutic concentrations within 7 minutes of a high-volume IM shot of this drug. So better all around. Parallel pathways. We're actually in discussion with some pharma corps that are interested in our technology too. We have one multinational pharma corp. We've had multiple meetings with the head of worldwide BD. They're interested in the high volume injector, and we're having follow-on discussions in early January with them to look at some partnership opportunities. When you think about partnership opportunities with a generic medication, a lot of people say, how does that work? Well, a recent acquisition of an old medication, Xanax, which has been used for sleep in a device called Staccato, new route of administration. Over 125 million upfront and 145 million follow-on milestone payments in phase 2 clinical trials, not FDA approved. All that this slide says is we're projecting sales and cash flow positive 2025. If anyone's interested in the numbers, let's book a meeting. We'll talk a little bit further. Who's on the team? You met myself. My co-founder, Chris Terra, is a mechanical engineer by training and a project manager with PCL Industrial Construction. So $100 million projects are what he normally works on. And then Kelly Motet is our fantastic COO. She's formerly with Innovative Trauma Care, which is the trauma clamp that's based out of Emergent. So she already has a device that she's helped get through regulatory and onto market that's used by the United States Armed Forces. We have an engineer and engineering training and an industrial designer on our team as well. And we're bringing on a business student and then a part-time CFO in the next 6 months. We've been engaged with lots of institutions. We have some fantastic advisors, some really great mentors from in Canada, including one who had the largest pharma exit in Canadian history up until about 3 years ago. We've worked with some really good accelerators to help bring us up to speed. And then meat and potatoes are why we're here. We are preparing, and I'm not saying we're in it yet, but we are preparing for a seed raise. $2.5 million US, really to flesh out our design for manufacturing is the main point here. We're going from additive manufacturing in-house prototypes, working with a contract manufacturer to be ready for those phase 1 clinical trials that the military says they're interested in helping us with. We're going to use some of that money for day-to-day operations, market and business development, furthering our IP, and then bringing on some of those key talent acquisitions. But almost 2/3, if not more than that, will be spent on fabrication of our device, ready to inject in my thigh. I'm over time, so I'm going to stop right there and open the floor to questions. John, question.
So first of all, great and amazing presentation.
Thank you.
I wanted to see if you could expand a little bit on presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said that the drug is been around for 50 years.
Yep.
So my first thought is, how come nobody has thought about this? How is this possible?
Yep.
Then I saw that when you were making a comparison, you had the last column where it said other auto-injectors. So I just wanted to.
So a lot of it is, not a lot, all of it is around the volume, right? People have talked about this almost a decade. Right, since that CRASH 2 trial came out, they said, well, how does it look in IM, and is it absorbed in trauma? Is it absorbed in shock? And people have been talking about it. Absolutely. It's getting that platform that can deliver the required dose, right? 16 times what EpiPen can. So you look at what high volume injectors are out there, and what is considered high volume is actually 2 mils. So there are 2 mil platforms available from companies like SHL and Ipsomed, which are platform device companies. They build a platform, you give them your drug, and they throw it together. One of them recently launched a 5 mil injector that takes 60 seconds and injects under the skin, not into the muscle, for biologics, specifically for cancer. There are no commercialized trauma injectors on the market. There are no devices which are FDA approved that can deliver this volume. Yet there are no devices looking at that, right? Because this is an emergency use auto injector, which is different from an auto injector. They actually have different regulatory pathways. But then at the same point, okay, if we're saying our IP is around the volume and how we get that volume in, what's going to stop someone else from concentrating the drug? That's why we're doing the drug concentration work and going for IP on that too. Yeah, so we're multi-prong approach. The other thing is, it's not sexy. A lot of people hear about this and they're like, well, you're not doing deep science in cure cancer. Okay, I agree. It's not, but it works. And then the other part that comes up is people hear generic medication. How are we going to make money on that? They tune out right away, right? And I started not caring about how to make money. I just want to stop people bleeding to death, and hopefully we can build a business case around it. So that's what the last 2 years of work have been doing. Yeah.
Smart. Congratulations. Again, surprised that nobody did it. So basically, according to your explanation, IV is visible, but still takes long. And I assume oral, you can never get to that concentration, right?
Oral can't. It just can't go there fast enough, right? Especially in shock. So we know in shock, the amount of blood that goes to your intestines, your stomach, decreases significantly. So absorption of these drugs in a shock state is crappy at best, pardon my French. People have talked about, okay, we have these soldiers in high risk settings. Why don't we just prophylactically dose them with the med before they go in the field? And then the concern comes in long-term high volume doses of the medication. What is the blood clotting risk and what is the toxin? So the military is very much interested in a point of care, set it and forget it device.
First off, multi-502B pathway of people's whole business model is working that because it's not exciting, but it is one of the fastest market. Clearly, patented kind of regulatory perspective. Are you reinventing the injection mechanism, or are you trying to work on your kind of previous designs and
it's a new injection mechanism that's specifically, so some of the feedback we had from the armed forces is we've had these devices that were approved in Europe. We took them, we internally tested them, lower volume injectors. They don't penetrate through the layers of clothing we need. They don't penetrate into the muscle deep enough. The spring isn't strong enough. We go around all of that by decreasing the amount of reciprocating parts and increasing the user force required to do the injection, which is how we get around that big mass that needs to shoot down and shoot up. We do it differently. Yeah. Yes.
Two questions. One, why track one pathway on the IP? And secondly, if you broken down your cost and units and utilization within, I don't know, say Canadian military or any particular market?
Yep. So let's go to the IP question first. We're doing the track one. For a couple of reasons. The main one is several investors have told us we want to see an examination and an opinion as opposed to a pending, a PCT. So the track one will get that through quicker, and that's going to be based on some of our pharmacokinetic data. Number two, I don't pretend to know things I don't know. I don't know IP very well. This is what was recommended by Smart Bigger and our patent agents there as a relatively cost-effective pathway to put another stake in the ground to protect our ideas. The COGS, at the moment, there is still a fair amount of design for engineering work, and it's going to be very much based on the goals. The COGS are going to be a small fraction of the sale price, and the sale price that we floated to multiple end users, EMS, civilian, military, is equivalent to that of an EpiPen, a generic EpiPen. Our return on that's going to be 5-6 times easily at lower scale, and so scaling that is going to be part of it. What do numbers look like? It's hard to pull full numbers. Every deployed soldier, sailor, airman, you can get those pretty simply from Canada, US, right? Over 100,000 American soldiers, over 20,000 UK, over 10,000 Canadian. When we're talking about bigger markets, well then, EMS, there are 9 million trauma calls in the States every year where EMS attends. Just slightly over 1/3, about 34% of those are attended by BLS, and about half of those are transported to the hospital. So quite easily there, if we get full uptake in EMS, that's over 1.5 million units a year. Now, that's a big if. My goal is I don't have to be the one to make that decision. That's going to be the pharma partner that helps take us into the line. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, sure.
To a point. Okay.
Good.
Yes.
Sorry, first of all, thanks for the presentation. I have a question just out of curiosity. So the TXA is now running, and the point of novelty is the high volume auto injector.
Correct.
Is there anything stopping you from using that for anything else other than TXA?
No, so that's part of what we're in discussion with as well. Very specifically atropine. So atropine is a target that's been identified by multiple military partners that could require high volume dosing for nerve agent toxicity, and they're looking for more supply chain options and opportunities for their nerve agent antidotes. There's several other agents that we can use high volume IM injection for. So it absolutely is a platform. With our regulatory lens, we're keeping focused on TXA because once the platform's there, the next drug is here. Yes.
You've got a complex lots of potential, lots of different directions, but your key customer, I think, is military, because they don't really care about regulation, because they'll just do it, and they have money.
Yes,
And so that's why you're going for that, right? First,
yes, times two plus, they are asking, right? It's a lot easier to give somebody something they ask for than it is to shove it down their throats and say you like it.
so will they co-invest, because they're not looking to really get a return other than helping their soldiers, so why aren't they giving you $1 million?
It gets tricky. So procurement is a quagmire right now, Canada, but outside as well. And corporate influence on procurement with the military is a huge bugaboo, right? People don't want to look like they're favoriting certain corporations. We are in discussions with multiple agents from the US DoD, the UK, and CAF in different funding avenues. The easiest funding avenue is likely that we generate the device, they do the testing. So that's a lot of financial impact that's not directly going into our company. It's they're just testing the device to see if they like it, and then it doesn't show that it's specifically favoritism, if that makes sense. So that's the pathway we're looking at, just because of some of the procurement issues. That's a good question.
I think we're at time also. Thank you for your
Wonderful.
presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And please do fill out feedback. I read it.
Well, thank you. That was a great presentation. Thank you for sharing. That was a great session. I learned a lot, and we're going to move on in after the break. So grab some more coffee, tea, and cookies. Thanks again to Emergent Global for all the great food and the wonderful space. And thank you for hanging out. It's been a busy day already. We do have 3 more. I think Nafaa is ready to Nafaa is ready to give a talk, and then we'll get set up, and then 3 more talks, and then a reception. It's unrelaxed. So afterwards as well. So, and thank you for filling out the forms. Great, and there's more food coming.
Introduce me to Nafaa. Kevin.
Yeah. I haven't seen her, but,
Sure.
hey, peace out. I think you might have sent your presentation.
I did. I just want to double check that.
Yes, you have an update or anything. We have them on here. So yeah, this is the one you sent me. Well, just to get on your work. It takes a minute to sort out if you want to find out. Holding will be introducing you from sitting over there on the Mr. Fantastic. Thanks so much.
It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna be out of it now. So, That's the old story.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I mean, we're having a good time here. It's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you come here. This is. Get more and more. Yeah, thank you for that. We were trying to improve the process. Things going on. Brian's supposed to be here. Yeah, I'm thinking of
Updated.
Yes.
And they'll email about NMR because
Okay, yeah, feel
it
free.
just came from the conference that the lady from
Well,
the
that'd be
from academic research.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we, the university, I don't know what we're gonna do there, because it's like, they haven't supported that.
It's not metabolomics per se, but
Well,
she's
that's fine.
interested in just
We just wanna
identification
help,
of.
users. That's-
Yeah.
We don't want a small molecule. I mean, it's gonna be simple.
Okay, sure, I'll connect you. Thanks.
Yes, I am.
Very good, very good question.
Okay, I got my presentation all the stuff.
Very good. Did you send it to?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so this is presenting. We've got 3 talks in this session. I was talking about yourself. And I don't know if Kevin was like, but everybody, it's good as well. So this is presenting fish.
Yeah.
I'm busy.
He is a guy, but he's not.
Is this the place for you?
Yeah, I was working. And I was in a house here, renting a place in Vancouver, so it's like, it's gonna take a year to renovate and clean it up, so why you say Vancouver? But
It's not so emotional. It's giving lots.
yeah.
The house and all the belongings.
Yeah. Well, my wife prefers it here to Vancouver, so it's like.
My son's in Vancouver. I say UBC. Well, he's the second year deciding.
It's a hot area.
Yeah. So. My children, so it's like, oh, yes. Quite got it.
Well, how long has, this facility been very long, it's like, for I guess that before it tells kind of your certain 20 seconds.
Those individually caregivers. So, what we do is, attract the FBI. Helping the region get more invested. Yeah, not like we are always one with this. Because of the needs. Yeah, we are, so we're not up to the spot.
So that's where I was looking at this. Hi, how are you? Yeah, that's. Yeah.
Yes.
I know this is also all volunteer and stuff, so I want to help for it.
All right, I'd like to thank all of you for finding your seats. That's terrific. Grab your cup of coffee, grab your refreshments, make yourself comfortable. We want to make sure you get home in time for your dinner tonight. So we're going to ask you to make your way slowly. And we have 3 more great pitches, and they deserve our full attention. And Nafaa is going to give us our next talk. And so if you could just get ready, and there even an advancer there as well. So we're going to kick off. And I think everyone's pretty much ready. 2 more seconds. Yeah, I think we're just about ready. All right, so I'd like to introduce Darren, who is chairing our next session, and I've asked to say a couple words about himself and natural products.
Thank you. My name is Darren Boulding. I'm the Regional Director of the Prairies for Natural Products Canada. We are a federally funded organization that supports commercialization of biological innovations, not in the medical area, but everything else from supplements to biomaterials, biochemicals, biosensors, food, ingredients, etc. And we have our own venture capital funds as well as government grants we do too. So first of all, I'd like to really thank you, Michael, for having me be a moderator for a session. It's a pleasure. I'd like to first introduce Nafaa Haddou. Nafaa is the co-founder of Terra Labs. Terra Labs aims to reduce barriers to entry for small to medium agriculture producers looking to set up automated greenhouses and vertical farmers. Welcome, Nafaa.
Hello, thank you very much. Sit over. All right, my name is Nafaa Haddou. As mentioned, I am the CEO, Chief Executive Orator through Terra Labs. I've been working in the space for the last half decade, and together with my team of about 10 developers, we're really focusing on solving a few of the major issues that you're hearing about. Things such as water shortages, overfiltration and runoff, unsustainable practices. These are all things that are impacting our ability to produce food and food scarcity issues that we're going through. At the end of the day, people that are actually working on this, farmers such as Every Tea Dandy, are looking towards the solution of vertical farm, indoor controlled agriculture. Every is a first generation farmer. He's built a greenhouse space, high capex, a lot of investment to get this facility where it needs to be. He wants to expand, but he's still suffering issues. Specifically, he has high operating costs. He has difficulty finding labor. And at the end of the day, suffered a near catastrophic failure in his operations due to pests and nutrient deficiencies. So he reached out to us, Terra Labs. What are we doing? He's already invested a high amount with regards to his capex. So he doesn't want to rebuild. He doesn't want us to come in and reinstall every single thing. As a result, we have a distributed control system. What this does allows us to go in, use the pre-existing information, and start collecting data for him. Things from nutrients, environmental CO2, water levels, pHs. At the same time, really start automating it. Other factor to it too is we have a hyperspectral camera system. This hyperspectral camera system, using near infrared imaging, looks at the way that the plant is behaving. Everything from nutrient draw all the way down to the way that it's vascularizing and using chlorophyll and the way it's reacting to the seeds. Finally, this is all leveraged into an analytics platform. Leveraging machine learning, we're able to create actionable outcomes things for him to change or set standards for it to immediately change based on pre-existing data sets. As a result, what we're able to do, being infrastructure agnostic, easily integrated, we're able to provide peace of mind. Through this, we're looking at a 30% earlier detection of plant diseases, issues for catastrophic failure, inabilities for proper nutrient growth or proper growth of plants and the nutrients to come through. As a whole, we're targeting, we would expect to help every with at least a 15% decrease in his operational costs, saving him in the long run for growth, expansion, and just increasing his bottom line. At the end of the day, using this, the machine learning systems, using our hyperspectral cameras, and using the integrated control systems, it provides a complete feedback. Every and his friends Thomas, Richard, and Harold compose a $45.6 billion industry within the United States and Canada. Of this, we're seeing a 24.6 growth rate year after year. For ourselves, our target area is to hit a 3-year of $38.9 million. Of that, within 5 years, we want to expand at natural growth and enter a market of 173 million within Canada alone. Our milestones really push forward with the technology development at this point of our journey. We're working in regards to implementing our pilot demonstrations. We're only as good as the data that we collect. As of now, we have one pilot demonstration here in Edmonton at a small farm called Botanical Pantry. And we're looking to add an additional 3 to 4 demonstrations over the next 3 to 6 months here. In addition, we're enhancing our machine learning, which is our target for our next phase, it's Q2, and making sure that our data analysis and the outputs are in line with our expectations and are providing those full actionable outcomes for our farmers. As mentioned, current traction, engaged with Botanical Pantry for the pilot demonstration. We have a consulting engagement from Northern Fresh Farms here in the Leduc and Nisku area for its 18,000 square foot conversion. And we've signed 3 letters of intent to be the primary technology partner and supplier for 3 vertical infrastructure implementers. Why am I here today? Oh, there you go. Why am I here today? The first thing is I know what I know. There's a lot that I don't. So advisories in regards to people in the industry, specifics in specific industrialist knowledge for agriculture. Those are the main key points that we're really. The other aspect is within the network, within the community of Edmonton or Alberta. We also want to bring in individuals and those that might see net benefit in our technologies. So if you work with farmers, you work with greenhouse growers, and you might think that they'd be net benefit, get them in touch. At the end of the day, we really want to hit our pilot demonstration targets. And last thing is we are looking to raise a pre-seed round in 2023. The actual closing date has not been decided as of yet. We are beginning our current marketing and more networking. So if you are interested in what we're doing, you are interested in our technologies, or you just want to keep in touch, we ask you to reach out, come to our meet and greets, stay as part of our newsletter, and in turn, join us on this journey in regards to solving the issue of food scarcity. Once again, my name is Haddou, and we're Naikyar Labs. Thank you.
Questions? Interesting presentation. So for your training data, for things like crop yield, I don't understand that's pretty easy to get kind of ground truth and prediction. But something like pest infection, do you have any plans to kind of artificially create that environment for your model beforehand?
Yes, that is a huge part of the pilot demonstration that we're doing right now is allowing us to collect that initial data in regards to those variances. Once we reach the stage and we have investment, we will be shutting down that facility. It's about a 2,000 square foot facility producing about 7,000 pounds of produce per month. We'll shut it off and we will actually arbitrarily introduce pests, diseases, and see how those data sets train and react to that. I'm also in conversation with Olds College and Lakeland College about setting up small facilities with them where we will be working with partners to once again test the validity of the systems and get that information, those data sets together. Thank you.
I'm wondering about the balance between getting grants with universities or OLS, for example, versus an investment. How are you optimizing those two streams? And what do you see that's unique about the investable opportunity?
For sure. In regards to our grant or the grant portion, the public sector, I'm a firm believer that rising tides lift all boats. So if we can work with the industry to really engage and bring more information to it, there's going to be data that comes back to us that is going to be accessible, implementable, that's verified to a certain degree, and we trust that. When it comes to the investment aspect, automation, what I want to simplify it to is automation is here to stay. The question is, when do you want to get into it and who do you want to trust to kind of be the spearheader? The growth in the market is expected to be astronomical, and it serves all facets along the pharmaceuticals industry, both from a data perspective, the hardware perspective, and specifically what we're targeting with improving efficiencies. So, finalize the investment in regards to investors seeing a 10x return over a 5 to 7 year is going to happen. It's just a matter of being a part of the journey and ensuring that you're committed to seeing the growth and pushing it narrative.
Yeah, I was curious if you've had any success with non-dilutive funding from government grant programs, because to me it seems like you're in two big spaces that are active in grants, both agriculture and tech.
Yeah.
And specifically information technology.
Absolutely.
And like this seems like a place that other states and NRCI-RAB and Innovative Solutions Canada are all playing. So
exactly.
A lot of opportunity. Just curious what success.
Yeah, for sure. As of this point in time, we've been self-funded through this journey. We've been strategic with accessing those grants because we want to actually make a full impact with those. Thus, as a result, at some points we felt we were a bit too early stage, and that it would be a better fit to maximize those benefits. I can speak, for example, the product demonstration with Alberta Innovates would be a huge benefit to our ability to get to the market. As a result, we've kept on the back burner our next 3 to 6 months, where I was mentioning we're looking to add additional pilots. That not only becomes a selling point for us to be like, hey, we're brand new, we're going to leverage this grant. This is we're able to subsidize our costs, and we're able to do X amount more because of this partnership. Are you interested?
My one recommendation is trial and error.
Yeah.
Is start early, build those relationships with the tech advisors.
Yeah.
And it's surprising what a 10K voucher could work into a year later when you show traction. As opposed to just applying for that big one first.
Absolutely.
And especially with something like youth employment grant
yes.
For bringing on like early stage technology focused.
We have actually leveraged those grants to support us. That's, I would say, one of the primary funding opportunities that we've gone through, and been able to support a couple of young innovators and interns throughout some project work that we've had.
I just have one quick question.
Yes.
Before we move on next. You mentioned you're looking for IP licensing device. Are you looking in your last slide? Are you looking to in-license technologies or?
Combination of both, right? In licensing, we want to be able to create a strategic licensing ability for export of that technology outside of Canada, as well as certain gaps that we might experience around traceability, as we were kind of discussing with you, these members. Sometimes it's not necessary to redevelop the wheel, and it's better to bring in that technology that's a little bit more formulated. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting stuff, especially relevant to the market in which we're operating. To build off of that last question, obviously relating to IP licensing, you that outbound. You also mentioned legal. Are there any other legal considerations? Or
yeah, so when we speak about legal, Canada is an amazing market, but there are opportunities stateside dealing with issues in the Columbia River, with their water shortages, etc. So creating the legal frameworks to operate in that country effectively would be great support. Other areas of interest for us are the Middle East, Dubai, Kuwait, Emirates, and they have specific legal frameworks, financing issues, etc., that we also have to be competent of in terms of regulation. And obviously the legal aspects of how we do business in those areas as well.
Well, thank you very much, Nafaa. I think we need to move on.
Not a problem. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Brian Gusko. Brian is the director of Emergent Waste Solutions. Emergent Waste Solutions uses thermolysis to convert organic waste into marketable products and is looking to make connections to people who can get involved in financing, including in a waste tire project in Canada.
Right, thank you. Okay, is there a clicker? I'll click it. See how this works. Okay. Good general disclaimer. I'm Brian Gusko, with Emergent Waste Solutions. I'm co-founder and director. So we've formed about 10 years ago, so it's not early stage, it's a bit advanced. We already have a plant in production. So what we use is a technology called thermolysis. People also call it pyrolysis, but technically pyro from Greek means fire. There is no fire in thermolysis. So in the absence of oxygen, we convert feedstock, homogeneous, whether it's plastic, tires, wood, MSW, or biosolids, to this output. And the output is valuable commodities of biochar, activated carbon, carbon black, green diesel, bio oil, or syngas, or also called renewable natural gas. So right now we have a plant in operation in Hope, BC. It was actually in Vegreville, on next to the Alberta Innovates facility there, where it was tested and validated by Alberta Innovates. And we ended up partnering with Yale First Nations and moved the plant into BC. Plus we had lots of feedstock, which was wood waste. So I'm going to be focused on tires. The next project that we've got is going to use tires as feedstock. So based upon the different types of feedstock with wood waste in Hope, BC, we actually produce biochar, syngas, bio oil. But with tires, the next project, we actually produce a diesel as well as a carbon black called recovered carbon black. So about 60% of the tire weight comes out in those two valuable commodities. The rest goes through a process which makes a syngas. We use the syngas to heat up the 4 reactors to produce the valuable commodities. So we're not inputting any natural gas. So part of the technology that we have called Advanced Thermolysis System, ATS, is there's no combustion. Without oxygen, there's no fire, no combustion. So there's extremely low emissions, environmentally friendly. No measurable secondary pollution, no measurable dioxin, and no burning or landfill requirements. Operating noise, 80 decibels. So we were actually in Vegreville, located across the yard from the school. No one could tell we were there. And we also have a patent applied for it, and it's proprietary process and technology to talk about. So focus on the tire issue. We tried to do this like 8 years ago in Alberta. You have a Crown Corporation trying to get the tires. They do things like cement kilns or for road waste, but most places they don't know what to do with tires. Just going in Accra on a fancy at a resort or walking along the ocean, you see tires all over the place. First few nights we got there, I have closed the window, there's acrid black smoke coming in, coating my lungs, making it hard to breathe. People actually burn the tires. Why? To get the scrap metal. So they burn the tires. That's all in Canada and most places in the world. And you get a low quality scrap metal. Plus, if you're just throwing it out there, it's leaching toxic chemicals into the environment. Plus, it's a breeding ground for mosquitoes, which carry diseases. So I just got back 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago from Ghana with our local partners. We had some backing from the Chamber of Mines, which are all major international mining companies are part of the chamber, and they realize they have an issue with tires. So when we produce the tires, we generate diesel and carbon black. So we're not contingent upon Ghana to provide the purchase orders for the diesel carbon black. We're in the process of getting offtake agreements from Europe, actually from Germany, for both the diesel and carbon black. But the mines, which would be providing the tires for free, would be, have expressed some interest in providing diesel, purchasing diesel from us. So talking about the opportunity in Ghana, it's actually one of the, it's a very pro-business environment. We've got local representation, great local team. The Ghana Investment Promotion Corporation is backing us. The EPA, we just had a meeting with them. We told them what we're doing. They said, you're just doing it with mines. Can you expand this across the country and deal with the tires? Because throughout the country, you think Africa's pristine, it isn't. You see these burn pits where people are burning tires. That's a huge pollution issue because when they burn it, you get heavy metals, vanadium, mercury, you have furans, dioxins, volatile organic compounds, everything that's sort of really polluting. It's 13,000 times more mutagenic when you burn the tires than actually from the pollution coal-fired power plants that you'd say have here in Alberta. So we have developed a business case with a pro forma justification. We've got mining industry support, as I said, from the Chamber of Mines. We've met with 8 of the mines. We already have an LOI with one of the world's largest mining groups. We've all identified a selection. As I said, we have offtake agreements with groups in Germany. So here's the numbers on this next project. We'd be looking at, on an annual basis, about $12 million revenue for all in carbon black. We do have a bit of a cost of goods sold. We did factor in, we may have to pay for some tires, but our ask and what we expect to be getting is like 90% plus of our tires we'd be getting for free because we're solving people's issues, the company's issues. Operating expenses, 2 million, amortization and royalties, 1.2 million. So we're looking at a net profit basis of $8 million. So that for the Ghana project, it's a 1,000 kg per hour facility. Just looking at the numbers on what our technology can do based upon different feedstocks, whether it's plastic tires or woods on a unit that's twice as much. Just for comparison, these are the numbers that can be generated by this. It's great if you have free input material and you don't have to pay for it. So I've been in the oil and gas industry. God, you have spent millions and millions of dollars in drilling, getting something in production, tying it to a well, to a pipeline. The tire resource is there. So how big is this? Okay, just looking at Canada, not Ghana, not Africa, not the world. We've got a lot of waste in Canada. You know, whether it's livestock manure. I saw that in Bakerville by Harry Hills, where they actually grow the A&W grass-fed beef, recycled plastic, MSW pulp mills, waste wood biomass. Just on a smaller unit of ours, there'd be 3,500 plants needed to do with the waste stream. In BC, they take the waste from the city, spray it on farmers' fields or on native reservations, but the natives are having some issues with that, obviously, and even farmers are no longer wanting it. So the products we produce, biochar, activated carbon, carbon black, green diesel, bio oil, renewable natural gas. Each one of these products market size globally is $1 billion. So these are not small segments that we're playing in. These are $1 billion global industries. So what's the business structure for the Ghana project? Which is why we're looking for funding for. We'd be doing a 50-50 JV between us and the local partners. Project financing would be 17 million. That includes our plant, plus ancillary equipment to chop up the tires, process the tires into rubber grubs, and remove the metal. Project financing would be secured by the capex of the project. There'd be a 3-year payback. So how will we generate profit and mitigate risk? We're negotiating long-term offtake agreements for the carbon black and diesel. Just came back from a conference in Germany where one of the chief scientists from BASF said, my God, if you can process multiple streams, not all throw it in once, but homogeneous. You throw in wood waste at one time, or you throw in rubber from tires, you throw in plastic. No other technology can do that. They said, I don't believe it, but if you can do that, it's a game changer. We've already processed rubber from tires with Alberta Innovates, and we've also are processing wood waste in British Columbia. So we've got free feedstock, and the Ghana EPA wants us to expand this to a nationwide or trial program for the city of Accra. So project financing is secured by us. I've worked around the world. I've worked for a law firm in China. Raised over 20 million for mining companies there. Extensive experience in South America, Africa as well. It is a rule of law country. I'm really confident in that country. So now the other offer is we are a company. I'm looking to have this company go public in Q1 of next year. So right now we've got 40 million shares out, hardly any options, and 1.25 million warrants. So the offering is we're looking to raise 2.5 million at 35 cents a unit with a half warrant at 70, exercisable for 2 years. So pre-money is, I think, pre-money valuation calculations just a bit off, but it's around 12 or 13 million. That's based on when it's around 25 cents a share. So why am I confident that this is a public deal, public opportunity? Well, the trend is your friend. You know, I'm not a salmon, I don't swim up the river. I look at what other companies are doing and I'm totally flabbergasted. So particularly what we're looking at is ECM and ACT. So Ecolomundo and Endura Clean Technologies, they've got valuation of 50 to 100 million. Legend Power Systems, symbol LPS, 23 million. Market cap. Chart Technologies just got a government grant. These companies are not in revenue, don't have a plant operating. ECM booked 98,000 in revenue last year in consulting revenue. They have 100 million market cap. So Kevin Hall has been CEO for 10 years, has brought it so far. About 10 years ago, a dozen companies showed up in Vancouver. High-grade energy, syngas, plasma, pyrolysis. Oh my God, there's like none of them exist right now. They all failed in 2 years. We now actually have a plant in operation. That's through the hard work and diligence of Kevin Hall. My background is capital markets. I've raised over 50 million for about taken 7 companies public. I've worked over with 10 public companies, mostly in the mining resource space and the clean tech space. Last company and cannabis. Last company I took public was BioImmuno at 200 million in market cap. Dan Becker has been detailed with a plant as well. And these are the other 2 board members. These are our local Ghana partners, Gabriel Osai. He's a key principal there. He's a university professor, recognized in Ghana and in Germany as an environmental scientist. And Dr. Raphael Gamara is an electrical engineer. He's worked with the government of Ghana and the city of Accra. The person here, Nana Ando, he's from the Chamber of Mines, and his push, it means a lot. So Nana is like an uncle or a chief. So he just walks into mines, he tells them, look, you should do it. The door's open anytime this guy shows up. That's why we're getting 8 minimum LOIs signed with these companies. The door's open, and that's the back end of the Chamber of Mines. So we just got back from there. Top 2 pictures are Anglo Ashanti Gold. The one on the left, there's 2 separate mines, 2 separate management groups. We have an LOI with one of those companies. This is Golden Star, and this is Ghana Manganese Corporation on the bottom right. That will be our next LOI. So key reasons to invest. I'm not going to read through it. You can see it all. And again, we've got a key team. We've got government backing, mining industry support, and it's going to be a secure debt with a 3-year payback. So when I said we're world leading edge, everyone says, oh my God, my technology is bad. So, you know, everyone says that. Sometimes, you know, it is true. Sometimes you're on the bleeding edge. We've had ABB. They're like, most people here don't know them. They know them in Sweden. They're like a Siemens corporation. It's a Swedish corporation. They've looked at our technology. It is leading edge. They say it's top pyrolysis technology they have seen. We've had scientists from UBC as well as other scientists look at our product, our technology, it's leading edge, and that's our endorsement. And I think my time is up now for presentation. Thank you. and any questions.
I spent quite a few years in specialty chemicals, specifically carbon black.
Oh, wow.
It's a very difficult market. So how
Indeed.
did you come up with your pricing? And it's a very, very mature market, so great. It's
Well-
difficult. A lot of these are, relations that go back, with Continental tires, or Toyota tires, their supplier can just go back 50, 60 years. So they're gonna break any of those.
Well, we just got back from the Recovered Carbon Black Conference, actually, Marina, my colleague from EWS, same there, she was at the conference, but the feedback that we had, and these Continental tires, they have the mandate to go to recovered carbon black, not use virgin oil by 2030, 2035. So there's a mandate to switch already. They're not doing it yet. The other issues in Europe, a lot of their carbon black come from Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. There's some supply issues that are associated with that, so there's a shortage. That's how we break it.
And then most important thing is going to be quality, because I imagine that is going to be a difficult one with the, unless you guys have mastered already, but ensuring high consistent quality across the
The
board.
consistent quality, you can have consistent, the poor quality is better than inconsistent quality that goes from good to bad. Because we use a steam pyrolysis. We've had our product tested through when we were in Vegreville. We did have a bit of a high ash content because we didn't wash the tires rubber crumb before we processed it. Some of the groups in Germany that looked at that said, okay, I don't believe it. You need to run it again. They have some new testing company in the US. And they're saying, look, they use electron scanning to or whatever. They have additional testing on it on the NBA. And they said, if it's as good as you say it is, it's game changer as well. So.
And then you're aware of some of the potential introduction of new restrictions from REACH within Europe on toluene content and also particle size that they may be hazardous.
We are aware of that, and that's didn't come up with our test data that we showed.
That's critical.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering about the joint venture. Are you doing any co-development of the product, the scale-up process, or do you own all the IP going forward?
We have the IP going forward.
Okay. Working in Africa is interesting. I mean, there may be particular challenges there, at least like they sometimes want jobs for Africans, for example.
Yeah.
What are the kind of obligations you have there long term?
The main concern that we actually got from the government of Ghana is that they want to deal with this environmental issue that they have. In terms of locals, yes, we're going to be hiring locals, and we may automate the process a bit less to give more locals a hire. And obviously our local partners, and that's how we enter into any foreign country is where we don't have the domain expertise is local partners.
One more question?
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation, really great one. Very impressed. I think this type of technology should be here as well. So
Yes.
hopefully we will be next to Ghana.
We hope. We tried to get rubber crumb tires, but there was that's before I was hands-on here, the CEO struggled because there's this Crown Corporation in Alberta that collects all the rubber crumb and they wouldn't provide it to us.
Who do you need to talk to get that resolved?
Kevin Hull, I'll reach out to the CEO because that was a big struggle. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Edmonton wants to lead in energy, and I would think that they would take a look at your proposition as it matures and everything.
We can even get in BC, they put it in cement kilns, and I don't know what they do with it here. I think they use it in asphalt.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
So our last speaker of tonight is Rob Brown. Rob is the CEO of KERB. KERB is a parking management platform that turns any parking facility into a digital data and customer experience driven operation while utilizing existing infrastructure and reducing CapEx, OpEx costs are in a Series A fundraise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome and good afternoon. I've just flown in from Sydney, Australia, where it was, I think, 35 degrees outside. So it's a bit of a shock if I start shivering through this presentation. So I'm Rob Brown, CEO and founder of KERB, founded in Australia, but very much global from day one. Play. I'm going to just run you through very quickly a few slides. And we've sort of been, I guess, building our network, trying to get product market fit primarily in Asia, and we're now moving west and really consolidating here in Edmonton, further to Edmonton International Airport, making a strategic investment into KERB at the end of last year. So you're going to be sort of hopefully seeing and hearing a lot more about us in this city, and we're going to sort of consolidate certainly our North American headquarters here, if not our global headquarters. So that's me. This is KERB. So parking, not the sexiest sector in the world, but it's nonetheless a $1 trillion, at least $1 trillion industry. Most cities in the world have a footprint taken up by parking at least sort of between 10 and 30, 40%. That's official car parks. LA, for example, is 24% of LA is surface car parks. 16% of London is car parks. And that doesn't count the car parks underneath the buildings, okay? So it's a massive industry. We all know the pain of parking. And it's just, the opportunity from a smart city perspective is if you can unlock parking, anybody who's read through sort of, smart city agendas from around the world will know they're pretty much the same. There's 7 to 10 pillars, and smart parking is always one of them. But how do you get the cars out of the city? How do you get the cars off the street? If you can unlock parking, you can unlock a city. So the cost of parking to society is huge. And this is an opportunity that cuts across the developing world and the developed world. Parking in Edmonton is no better than parking in, Islamabad, Pakistan. Really, it's the same thing. You go into a shiny mall and just have an awful experience underneath. And it's a cost in terms of traffic, time, money, productivity, and the environment. Building big concrete car parks around the city, even with the best of intentions, park and ride facilities, etc., is not the future for a smart city like the Edmonton and other cities in Canada and North America are aspiring to be. And yet, the places a person parks tells a really interesting story about their lives, okay? So ultimately, and I hope you'll, by the end of this sort of 10-minute presentation and the end of any Q&A, you'll understand that KERB is a data play. KERB gives you access to a parking facility based on the identity of the driver, not the vehicle, okay? So we open the gate based on the fact that John Doe is at the gate. We know that John Doe's opened the gate at 9:17. We know what time he left. We know how many times he's been to that car park. And, we know whether it's John or Jane in the car, his wife. And, the opportunities and the potential from that are huge. So the places we park every month, a little bit like the credit cards, the places you spend money every month on your credit card, tell a really interesting story about your life. But there's never been a way to aggregate this. And KERB, that is the platform that KERB aspires to be. So what is KERB? So for drivers, we're an app, okay? We're an app that aggregates all sorts of different parking spaces, any type of vehicle. Okay? It's not just, we think about parking, we think about cars, but what about, there are sort of 1 billion, almost 2 billion motorbikes, in other parts of the world. They need to park too. Boats need to park, private jets need to park. Every type of vehicle needs to park. So KERB caters to all those types of vehicles. We're launching a product next year here in Edmonton called KERB Air. This will be Alberta will be the first place we launch it, which is parking for private jets, which is very different for parking for planes, for example. There's a huge market there. Not as big as cars, but for car park owners and operators, we are a B2B software platform that allows them to drive efficiencies from their parking facility. The airport, for example, here in Edmonton, one of the reasons they've invested for 2 reasons. One is CapEx, okay? they're going to save $6 million in non-renewal of their parking equipment by having KERB in their car park. And they're a small airport. LAX, $70 million of parking equipment up for renewal next year. So those are the kind of savings and obviously from an OpEx perspective as well. So for B2B car park operators, or landlords, commercial landlords, anyone with a property portfolio, etc., KERB has potentially, very significant advantages. And we're building for all of these verticals. Okay, so obviously airports, schools, hospitals, these have all got car parks. Some of these verticals have got car parks that are empty, for 6 days a week or 20 days a month. Big sports stadium, could be, etc. Ski resorts. We're going live. We actually went live today in Marmot Base. And we're going live in another bunch of ski resorts. There, you can't, that you have to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning to get a parking space in their car park within a kilometre of the lift. Why can't I book it in advance? I'm happy to pay $20 a day. That's what they're going to do. That's what the Mountain Collective group of ski resorts are going to follow in the next few weeks. So that's what we are. So I'll share these slides with anybody who wants to see them. But parking the old way with KERB, with legacy systems, high friction, high capex, high opex, no data on the drivers. Okay, they're expensive to implement, expensive to maintain, and a terrible user experience. So KERB is a very, very different experience. Drive in, the gate opens. Drive out, the gate opens. And we can only do that because we know the identity of the driver. And it's taken us the better part of 5 years to get to product market fit, to get that tech experience, that access experience. Well, we've now got that. So our business model, again, so drivers don't pay today. There is an opportunity down the track to charge a transaction fee, 3% or whatever, in the similar way that Airbnb and Uber do. But today we charge the car park operators, the landlords, so the B2B side of the business. So we have a setup fee, and this could be, 1, 2, or all 3, depending on the volume, the size. A setup fee, which is, we put our hardware in, we've got a small device that sits in the gate. We're just about to introduce AI cameras into that mix. So, and they're optional, you don't have to have them. We have a monthly platform SaaS fee, which varies depending on volume, and we have a commission on bookings. So in some car parks, it might be just a commission on bookings, a transaction fee on every booking. Others, it might be a combination of monthly SaaS fee and transaction. We get whatever we can, depending on the opportunity in front of us. So that's essentially how we make money. How are we going to win? So we've got to scale up parking, over the next five years. 2 key verticals that we're focusing on. Airports, number 1. Okay, why airports? Because the airport is the gateway to the city. If we're building a model out of the airport here in Edmonton with all sorts of different use cases. I mean, you've all been to the airport. It's not a normal airport. Okay, it's a very innovative airport, and it's known on the global stage. Edmonton, you've all met Myron Keane, or many of you have. He is a real thought leader in terms of visionary, in terms of what they're doing at the airport out there, with the casino, with the racetrack, the gun club, the marijuana farm. It's just, you go to the airport for lots of different reasons, but airports, we are talking to a significant number of airports now that the Edmonton airport is opening doors for. But buildings is the other one. Commercial buildings, we've got buildings going. We've got the Expo Centre is going to go live on KERB this month. We've got a number of other significant buildings in the city that will be coming live. So that's our focus. We're focusing mostly, there's so many different verticals that we can play in, but we need to focus. So airports and buildings, and primarily buildings in North America and buildings in Southeast Asia. So Philippines, Malaysia. Malaysia is our biggest market today. Philippines will very quickly overtake that in the next couple of months. But there's all sorts of other verticals like ports, marinas, etc. And then other complementary services, EV charging, for example. 2 of our investors that came in last year have just exited a 7% position in ChargePoint, biggest EV network, charging network. When you think about it, EV charging, etc., that's an obvious add-on complement to what we're doing. Our go-to-market strategy, as I say, airports, buildings, and then cities. Smart cities, of which Edmonton, aspires to be one. Last year, the other big thing that happened last year is that, we won Toyota's global smart city competition. That was a big deal. That was $1.5 million prize money competition. 90 tech companies from around the world. And ironically, one of the finalists, one of the 6 finalists that made it through to the final round, it was a 2-year process, was an Albertan company, but KERB was lucky enough to win that competition. So in terms of traction, we've gone contrary to every business that go narrow, go deep, win one city, and then go to the next city, city number 2, number 3. We really took it global from day one to learn about parking around the world, try little things in little countries, what works, what doesn't, and then consolidate. And that's also how we've ended up in Edmonton, because we spread the net wide to really learn about the opportunity from a global perspective. But we can go fast. KERB is essentially, it's translated, fully translated, 20 languages. It's optimized for 600 cities in 130 countries. We're in 10 countries today, but we can move into new opportunities very quickly. We launched in Thailand, in Thai, in Azerbaijani during COVID, without even visiting those markets. So we're really geared up to growth, and then the growth is going to come. I mean, there's a lot of detail on there that probably can't read from here, from where you're looking at it, but there's a lot of Canada flags on that, just in terms of the next couple of years. And next year in particular, we're expecting to get at least 1, if not 2, significant commercial airports that will come on, in addition to all the regional airports. So we're still quite an early stage revenue company. We do, a few thousand transactions with, a month, but that is about to really start to ramp. I mean, the airport, once we implement there, they do 30,000 cars a day. They want all of their data, or as many vehicles as possible, to go through KERB. And then from an investment hypothesis perspective, final slide, we, as was announced, we've got a Series A round open at the moment, a $10 million US round on a $50 million valuation pre-money. And we've got about 6.5-7 mil left in that round, unallocated. And I'm out here this week to really talk to, some Albertan investors to see if we can get a consortium of local investors, from Edmonton and Calgary, that can really get behind KERB, and and then we'll take it out to the rest of Canada, and then more broadly across North America, and from a Series B perspective later next year. That's KERB.
Thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Really interesting. I'm still trying to figure out, though, for the individual, what do you do for me and my car for my data? But what do I get?
For you and your car, essentially, if you think about KERB as the sort of Airbnb parking, I know it's a cliche.
Reservation?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so book in advance. You can drive up to a parking lot. You don't need to touch any of the legacy equipment. You just drive in. Timer starts. If you're a drive-up parker, if you want to book in advance, you book in advance. You've got a broad variety of parking options on the KERB app. So it could be somebody's driveway, but it could be Edmonton Oilers, the Ice District car park, or it could be the airport, so all sorts of different car parking options available.
So it's reservation based.
Yeah, it's a booking engine. Yeah, for the user.
It's booking engine. Yeah. In larger areas, is that stall specific?
So
because
yeah,
why would I utilize at Edmonton Airport when there's going to be some form of parking available?
Yeah, okay, so number of reasons, and they've got so many different use cases out at the airport, but maybe I want to book in advance. Maybe when I drive up to the gate, I don't want to open my window because it's minus 23 degrees outside, and I just want to drive through the gate, for example. I don't want to touch the pay machine. I don't want to have to go out to the, I can just drive out. The first time you ever took an Uber, you just went, oh my God. They've just taken a process from getting from A to B, and they've removed steps. And those steps are tangible in that I don't need to queue, I don't need to call, I don't need to double park and pay, but park illegally while I'm paying in my taxi, etc., while it's dropping me off. So it's just removed steps, and KERB does the same. So essentially I can park, and one of the things we'll be introducing next year is a loyalty scheme. So, I can start to get rewards for parking. We can plug into the airport's rewards, or we can plug into, West Edmonton Mall in a future scenario, their reward scheme, and some of the retailers. So one of the things that, especially with retail, is why do you have to pay? Now, I know you don't have to pay for parking at West Edmonton Mall, but in many malls you do. In Australia you do. Many countries you do. After 2-3 hours, you might get the first 2 hours free. Why isn't a retailer paying me to park? Okay? I'm going there to spend money. I'm going there to spend all day Saturday there. Why can't Tim Hortons pay for my parking today if I'm a gold user? Okay, if I go to West Edmonton Mall, twice a month or 3 times a month, then why can't somebody pay for my parking? Why can't, when I go out to at the airport, for example, I've been there 12 times this year, why can't randomly, sometimes I just go and they say, your parking's being paid today. Thank you for your loyalty. There's just none of that in the parking industry. It's such an arcane. The parking industry is exactly where the taxi industry was 12 years ago, before it got completely disrupted by our internet-based, competitor called Uber. So it's the same opportunity, and it's the same people as the taxi industry. They're the same, people who run parking lots. It's the same crowd. So that's the opportunity, and to be able to just aggregate all the parking spaces. And this will be the first city that we managed to aggregate. I have no doubt with some of the conversations that we're going, and once the airport really gets going, there's probably 300,000-400,000 cars in Edmonton. If we can get 100 to 150,000, regular KERB users, then we've got every chance of completely winning the city.
Question? Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Product, cool business model. 2 very different questions.
Yep.
First one is obviously insightful how you are able to be one of these insights based on somebody's partner values.
Yeah.
What measures are you taking to protect the responsibilities that they have?
Yeah. So the data question comes up, all the time, and we introduced a feature. So there's a couple of things. One of the things we're going to use the Series A funds for is to re-platform KERB. We're probably going to move off AWS onto Azure. We've got Microsoft funding a piece of development work on digital twins at the moment. Obviously they want us to move on to their platform, but we need to there are so many data complexities across the world. For example, in Hong Kong, which we've got 3 investors in Hong Kong. That's a market you just cannot take data out of that market. It's an extension, obviously, of mainland China now. So that data will not be portable. Obviously, GDPR in the EU, here in Canada, the data puzzle is getting more complex. So that's one of the things we're going to do. But from a basically, how do I protect my data, and how do I know what KERB's sharing? We've got a feature in KERB, which is part of the B2B product, which you can switch on and switch off. A lot of buildings have requirements that if you're coming into my office tower, you've got to agree to the terms and conditions like every other tenant. Okay, so how's that going to work with KERB? Well, we built that feature in a few years ago, so you can have custom terms and conditions. It's like, by parking here, I agree that KERB will share the following data points with West Edmonton Mall, or with Central Tower, or whatever. So that's how we circumvent the data issue. It's obviously it's a we encrypt data. We don't store any transaction, any credit card details or anything like that. We do everything. All payments are through third parties. We use Stripe as our main sort of payment provider. And we have e-wallet integrations in other parts of the world. So But data, that's how we get around it essentially, by parking at that particular, not in our general terms and conditions. I mean, it's in there too, but it's like parking at this facility. I agree that one of the conditions to park here is that, you know, the following data will be shared. Yeah.
And I guess, completely separate question, have you guys experienced any traction with universities or post-secondaries?
Yeah, so universities and schools are and private colleges, I mean, especially universities, got a huge car park that's free at the weekend, essentially. We're working with one university in Australia. It is a really big market for us to go after, but it's been about getting our product to where it needs to be. So you've just got that seamless drive in, drive out. And that's, I mean, today, if you open the KERB app and you can open a gate just by pressing a button, as long as it's got one of our devices in there. But as I say, by January, it'll just drive up. So that gives us a very, very differentiated experience from the legacy sort of parking systems that they've got in like Indigo and, you know, InPark, etc. So, but we've just started, we're talking to U of A, and I think Nate is the other one that yeah.
So when you go into, say, an event, do you supplant the existing infrastructure that's already there? Because I know there's a lot of, I mean, it's split right now between honk and tag. Like, what number of tickets?
So it's a great question, and the answer is no. Okay, and that's the attraction to it. That's why the airport, you know, for example, they don't need to change any of their gates. So KERB works in the real opportunity here is that the parking gates are done. Okay, there's no such thing as a digital gate. They're mechanical, they've got a motor and arm in them, and they all work the same. You just got very, very different price points. So the gates out at the airport, for example, cost $35,000 each. Okay, but you can get a gate from you know, a developing world country, a low end gate for $1,000, but they work the same. So no, that's the whole thing. You don't need to. And the other thing that we've just done with the AI cameras that we're just implementing is you don't need, like, we can now go after the surface car park market, the gateless. You know, you drive in, there's a meter there, there's a pay by phone option. Well, with KERB, we can have it on a pole, we can have a camera, an AI camera in a KERB box. So the box is connected to the internet, the camera is connected to the box. So you drive in, takes a photo, you know, it scans your plate, it's like, welcome back, John. And you drive, it starts a timer, drive out, and same thing, you don't touch anything. So the whole enforcement thing goes away. So that's a real, and that's gonna give us the opportunity to go up against the pay by phone and the parking meters. The councils, you know, the municipalities, they just, even though it's a big revenue generator for them, they just hate having to manage those things. And so yeah, big opportunity. Yeah. There's another question.
Sure, we have time. So for the data perspective, value consumer data comes from, so unless you're mining full data or working closely with data brokers, what's kind of the value of your data? Because even with, you know, some credit card information, some location data on the market, that's fractions.
Yeah, so we don't store, we're not interested in credit card or transactional data, okay, in terms of, you know, storing any data. What's the value? If you're, and there are lots of car parks in the world, many car parks in the world that are not interested in data at all, okay? I would say the majority actually, because they don't realize the value of the data. But for example, for the airport, like the Flair airline, the Flair Airlines flight that's just landed, you know, 2 minutes ago, they've got all the data on who's in the plane, okay, or Air Canada, but the airport doesn't. They've got no data. They've got blunt instruments like free Wi-Fi that they try to capture data on, but it's not. They've got no, you know, holistic picture. So if you're a progressive airport like Edmonton is, they're super interested. They've got 8 million passengers a year and another 18 million visitors that go out to the casino or the, you know, the gun club or the. So that's the value for them. For a shopping mall, we're dealing with a very progressive retail group in Australia, Centre Group. They're same thing. All they want is data, and they use their loyalty cards, but they're only getting a tiny fraction because nobody wants another card. I don't want another loyalty program, another card, but you have to go through the car park to get into the venue. So if we can capture the data there, or they can capture the data there through KERB, that becomes really interesting. And then even for a building, a residential building, you know, an office, just to know who's come in, be able to, with the cameras, we can take a photo of the vehicle. We know what time they came in, what time, etc. There's a whole security piece out there as well, which is really, really interesting. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, you got such a huge market, international, so many segments, like I'd go nuts, frankly. How are you going to focus to where the real value is? Like, doesn't it make more sense to go to the car manufacturers and embed what you got with them, rather than trying to chase all your customers?
So we need to get the inventory to be interesting to a car manufacturer. Okay, we'll see how this plays out. I believe Toyota ultimately will end up investing in KERB. We've had numerous conversations with them. We're still a little bit early stage with them. We won their global hackathon as well. 4 years ago, they flew us up to Tokyo. We signed an MOU to build a version of KERB for Toyota and Lexus vehicles, but we need inventory. Okay, but from a car manufacturer like Toyota, for example, if I can sell you a Toyota and give you free parking in Edmonton for 6 months across, choose from 5,000 different spaces, then maybe I'll buy the Toyota rather than the Nissan that I was looking at. So and from, you know, they're dealing with drivers, knowing where all the drivers in Edmonton are parking would be extremely interesting for them. But it's the chicken and egg. We need the inventory before we become really interesting for them.
Well, cities have this problem, but they want to incentivize electric vehicles. How do they do that? They could do it by free parking. So does government kind of understand the value of what they could realize by partnering with you to incentivize more aligned parking behavior?
Governments are starting. I mean, governments need to be educated, and that's why it was so important winning the smart city, Toyota smart city, and having that use case that we're rolling out in Kuala Lumpur, because governments, they don't have budget, they don't have time to build parking lots, and you've got this tragedy of the commons with the park and ride facility. You know, some countries have they build these parking facilities, but you can't book them. And so you've got to get there at 7 o'clock in the morning to get a space. So what do? You just drive straight into downtown, completely defeats the object. It's like the odd even number places that some developing world countries have introduced, cities have introduced, where on a Monday you can, if your number of license plate ends in 7, you can only drive on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So what do people do? They just go and buy a second car. It completely, it's a really just one of those crazy. So for governments, it's like they want to get cars out of the city and they want to get people onto public transport, but they recognize that people need to get to the public transport hub. Not everyone's going to cycle, especially in a city like this. So you've got to have parking facilities around. So if you've got park and ride, KERB solves that problem because you can book it and we can open the gate if you've got a gate. If not, we can open up all sorts of private residential parking spaces around the transport hubs. So people, while they go to work, their parking space is empty, they could be renting on the KERB platform. So we were expecting 5 years ago when we launched KERB, 5.5 years ago, we're expecting resistance. A lot of people said you're going to get a lot of resistance from governments like Uber and Airbnb have. It's been the opposite because we solve a problem for the government at zero cost to the city. Yeah, it doesn't cost anything to put KERB in. It's just, and the cities always complain that there's nowhere to park. There's not enough parking spaces. Every city's got plenty of places to park, and the proof of that is at 4 o'clock in the morning. Where are all the cars? They're all asleep somewhere, right? So but the problem is that most of those parking spaces are behind gates or on private property, and you can't get to them because literally there's a gate there or there's a security guard. So that's the opportunity, which is
I have a question regards to integration with Google outbounds made all these processors, similar to being able to come downtown and point your destination. All that the outbounds.
Yeah, totally. We do turn by turn sort of navigation with Google today, but the ultimate, and I didn't because we've only got 10 minutes to present, but ultimately KERB becomes a city app, and parking is the cornerstone service that to unlock the city, but we then add third-party services like EV charging, like trip planning. And we won't build most of those services ourselves. They'll be third parties, but we'll plug them into the platform. So it'll be curb, so everything curbside, you know, side of the road, EV charging, parcel delivery, fleet management. You know, that one of the things they're talking about a lot in Europe at the moment is delivery to the trunk. You know, you've got all these cars parked in a retail like West Edmonton Mall, and then you've got FedEx and Uber and all those sort of taking the parcel way out to the suburbs, you know, several kilometers, where there's the car that's going to that destination is actually is on the premise. So there's all sorts of things that we'll get into ultimately, but parking today is our focus. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we need to move on to our.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you all for hanging out, all the great questions. And thank you again, Edmonton Global, for for hosting and providing wonderful food and drinks at the back. So please hang out, relax, continue the conversations, share your business cards, follow up, and let's get some of these great ideas here to Edmonton and see if we can develop some new partnerships. So thanks again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brisbane.
Brisbane. And then it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
One of my good friends actually is.